The series starts in a place called Spiral Mountain. This is where the villain's lair is, Grunty's lair. And it is also where the hero's house is, Banjo and Kazooie's house. You, the player, identify with Banjo and Kazooie, and not with Grunty. You're fighting against Grunty as Banjo and Kazooie. So here, in a single place, we find both elements, that which you are and that which you aren't. Grunty and Banjo-Kazooie. They both live in the same space, a space which is a spiral or evokes the spiral as symbol. The spiral is an orbit around a gravitational attractor. That's one way to describe it, or how I choose to. It goes around and around, but every time it's circling closer and closer to the center. So we're speaking of the act of not directly going towards something, but going towards something. It's the process of going around it, avoiding it, you could say, just looking at it from the outside and never fully colliding with it, but it is in the direction of going towards it. If it's a spiral that eternally spirals inwards, as we can't see what happens at the end of the spiral, then presumably it might even go forever down into its object. It never reaches its goal, but its entire travail is directed towards the object, being an oblique and sometimes even avoidant path. It's never got its vector directed towards the object. Its vector is always directed towards something that isn't the object, and always something different. It's always changing object, and even changing object to paths that are opposite to the previous path. First it was going up, then it's going down. But something is attracting it towards the center without it focusing on the center as a vector. So here we have two paths, up and down, that are coexisting. Perhaps because of this, a spiral is where two opposite things coexist. A path this way and a path that way. Grunty is doing things undesired by Banjo and Kazooie. Banjo and Kazooie are doing things which don't benefit Grunty. They are opposite ways, but they coexist. They somehow live in this spiral mountain. A spiral mountain is a mountain, so a place that goes up, you ascend it. In fact, here, this spiral spirals up towards Grunty's face, towards a bridge that connects us with her face and an entrance, which is her mouth. The spiral spirals up towards there. So these two places of living are not equal. Banjo and Kazooie live below, at the foot of the mountain. Grunty lives at the peak of the spiral mountain. The spiral mountain spirals up to her house. And it spirals down towards Banjo and Kazooie's house. They relate to it in different ways. However, you only go up in the spiral in the first game. In the second game, the spiral is sort of abandoned. The first game starts with you having to follow a very clear path towards the start of the game. The game sort of leads you nicely to the path, the spiral, and that's the path you must take to enter the game, to enter the main hub. In Banjo-Tooie, you follow a different path. You follow the tracks left by the hag, the vehicle Grunty rides. The hag tunnels from the underground and then retreats back into the underground. You follow its tracks and the holes it has left in the wall, the first of which leads to a cave. Your initial contact with the hub world is through a cave, an underground cave, which leads to the Isle of Hags main game. The first game led you up to a path that led you up to a Grunty's face. So it was leading you up. Your first hub world entrance was climbing up a mountain to a cave. In Banjo-Tooie, you're tunneling down into a cave under the earth called Inside the Digger Tunnel. Banjo-Tooie furthermore lets you travel the land with a series of underground silo tunnels created by Jamjars the Mole. What I'm trying to say is that Banjo-Tooie seems to be a game that starts off leading you towards the underground dimension, whereas Banjo-Kazooie was a game that started off by leading you up the spiral towards the lair, which was positioned up in the sky, above the mountain. What this means to me is that the spiral is said to lead upwards if you climb up, so it would suggest that the spiral leads downwards if you go down it. if you follow its path in the opposite direction and go down. This doesn't happen, you don't explicitly walk down the spiral, but it seems almost as if the first game is about climbing up, and the second starts with climbing down, into the digger tunnel underground, downwards. If so, Spiral Mountain in the second game is a place that leads you down. The spiral would evoke climbing down in the second game. It's a hypothesis I'm going to work with. The idea would be that the closer you get to the center of the spiral, the more you're going up. After all, the lair is up at the very center of the spiral, up in the mountain. Then, if you get away from the center, if you spiral away and away from the center, you're going down. Going up was getting closer, so going down means getting away from the center of the spiral, and in fact getting progressively further and further away. So this game is about descending the spiral instead of ascending it. The first game was about ascending it. The second is about descending it and getting away from it, getting away from the spiral center. In fact, the further away you get from it, the further away you're descending. The game is indeed about leaving Spiral Mountain, leaving this home place, this home ground, and getting further and further away from it, and by extension, further away from the center of the spiral, which this area is, which this mountain is. Exploring the Isle of Hags, going towards this island and exploring its furthest reaches means getting very far away from home, and therefore very far away from the Spiral Mountain and its spiral center. So you're spiraling towards the exterior of the spiral, outwards and therefore downwards, since the center meant the top of the mountain. This game, you're going down Spiral Mountain towards the depths, further away. What does it mean to descend a spiral? Well, if as you ascend, the spiral gets shorter, so the loops around it get quicker. You can make a full loop of the spiral in just a few movements. But at the bottom of the spiral, it takes a long time to get around. It takes a longer time. At an equal speed, of course, if Banjo and Kazooie are running at basically the same speed, the smaller loops will take less time. So we're dealing with time. Going up the spiral speeds you up. Going down it speeds you down. The rotations get slower and faster depending. I think slowness is central to this game. Here is what I think. In this game, you descend the Spiral Mountain, which leads you to a state which is slower and slower. You explore the theme of slowed downness. The game deals with the death of Bottles. Bottles dies because he is slow to exit the house. He is also presented as being slower to see what everyone else is seeing. This is sort of apt given his name reflects his thick glasses, sort of implying he's got bad eyes. Of course, this is a reference to the fact that moles are thought to have poor vision, I guess. So the game is joking with the idea that Bottles doesn't see Kazooie cheating on him with the cards. When the house starts shaking, we get 3 different perspectives. Mumbo gets first-hand evidence that it's Grunty. He sees it with his own eyes. He guides Banjo and Kazooie to see it for themselves, second-hand, by looking out of the window. Not a direct look, but a good enough look. They do and escape because of that. Bottles has been tricked before. He was tricked by Kazooie precisely to look out of the window at her, and now won't fall for that again. So he doesn't see. He refuses to look out of the window because he's been tricked. So he doesn't run. He stays calmly in the house. This is an interesting introduction. The game replaces Bottles with Jam Jars, a sort of pepped-up Bottles, always marching, shouting, waving his stick around, saluting. He's supposed to be like an opposite of Bottles, Bottles' brother, like an anti-Bottles. I think the game is making a decision when choosing to make Jam Jars the brother and opposite. The joke is that Jam Jars is very lively, where Bottles is slow and sluggish. Jam Jars barks and raves, where Bottles sort of calmly speaks and doesn't really do things very fast or with much energy. The game is defining Bottles as cozy, slow, someone who likes to wear his slippers and slowly drink his tea, someone who's not into big adventures or running around or being very explosive. a soft, relaxing sort of person. It is precisely him who dies. Softness, slowness, dies in favor of high-energy war, militaristic Jamjar's energy. Slowness dies because it wasn't alert. Jamjar's is alertness, he is attention. Bottles has blindness, he can't see. This lack of attention is part of why he dies. He can't see the death coming towards him. At the same time, the reason he dies is because he's tricked. He's traumatized by this hurt and doesn't want it to happen again. He is taken advantage of, fooled. Presumably, the reason this works on him is because he's not alert. He's trusting. He's not been paranoid and always assuming someone's tricking him, or that there's danger around the corner. He thinks things are good, so when someone tricks him, it hurts. He doesn't like that and refuses to be hurt again. This is why he dies. So his friends kill him. Jamjars is someone who is in the military. He's expecting danger. Everything is a danger, and you had better be ready to combat it. Be ready for it. Be on edge. Be alert for it. There is no relaxing, no trust, no just lazying around. One must be ready for all alerts. The game is forced to switch into this mode because of Bottles' death. It is the death of comfort, of just lazying around, loving life and trusting the environment. Jamjars, then, is a force in this game. I feel he has an unexpected effect. He teaches you moves which turn Kazooie into more of a mystical creature. Now Kazooie is a gun. She turns into a small mechanized version of herself. Banjo's backpack is more of a mystical place where anything could happen. Kazooie can rotate her tail like a mechanized wheel. She feels more like a technology that Banjo can use. Jamjars teaches you to fight, so he uses Kazooie as a weapon. His moves involve using Kazooie as a weapon very often, in ways that sort of transcend her animal nature. She becomes a sort of machine or a magical weapon that can use fire, ice. The first game seemed to be about someone who gets kidnapped, who loses to the power of the witch because of her fastness. Tutti is running and hopping in the morning, but Banjo is still snoozing. Banjo's low energy is what prevents him from meeting the witch this time. Tutti, who is out and about and energetic, meets the witch. Banjo has been too slow. It's time to wake up, speed up, become more energetic. Bottles teaches him moves which are collaborative. He can collaborate with Kazooie in ways that mean team play. Jamjars teaches moves that make Kazooie into a weapon, a magic object to get power from. In the Tui world, Banjo got saved because he was fast. His friend died because he was slow, and Banjo didn't slow down to take him with them. Tutti died because Banjo didn't speed up to get up to speed with her energy levels. Tui is about slowing down in a world that has grown very fast, too fast. And Kazooie is about speeding up in a world that has been slow for a long time. In Kazooie, Bottles teaches us to do things together. Here, Kazooie can help him save his sister. He's asleep, and she can't help him. Kazooie can't. Banjo needs to wake up and listen to her. So Bottles teaches us to collaborate, for Banjo to listen to Kazooie, to do moves together. Jamjars teaches us to see Kazooie as a magical being, a being one can't collaborate with, but instead it grants wishes. To help us get it to grant us our wishes. Because it was here that Banjo listened to Kazooie too much. She was saying Banjo should steal from Bottles. She lied to him. She tried to get away from him without saving him. Things are going too fast. There's no time to reflect on what is being said. Banjo just listens, just collaborates without thinking about his own place in it. Perhaps the first game was about Banjo surrendering to Kazooie, learning to relinquish his will and collaborate, listen, do things together. Tui then might be about Banjo learning dominance over Kazooie, learning to dominate her, become the harnesser of her magic. How does the first game happen? Well, Bottles does see Grunty, but he thinks she's Banjo. He doesn't know what it is, but he does see it. In Banjo-Tooie, he does know it's Grunty. He's told it's Grunty. He's afraid of her. So he tries to look, tries to see her, but he doesn't. He doesn't see her. In both games, the things are inverted. He either sees something but doesn't imagine it could be Grunty, or he imagines it's Grunty, he thinks it's her, but he doesn't see anything. In the first game, his mistake is probably connected to Tootie's fate. If he had thought it was Grunty in the sky, Tootie would have probably reacted and run away. Bottles saw something. He was the first and only to see, but he had no knowledge of what it was. Grunty's appearance here says something. She uses Tootie to give herself a more beautiful body. In Banjo-Tooie, she plans to suck energy from the island itself, from anyone, to give herself her old body. I think she wants this because she doesn't like her skeleton body. The theme of being considered the most beautiful person in the area is gone. Mumbo Jumbo falls in love with her in the first game, showing that her goal is to be the most beautiful person for the world, for others. In a fairy tale way, the first game is a competition, then, for first place in the beauty world. When everyone finds her the best, she'll be satisfied, or that is implied. In the second game, the satisfaction comes from her own desire. She wants to have her body. There is an implication also of comfort and utility. Her old body probably had more force. She seems to be annoyed that her eyeballs keep falling out, etc. So there are issues of efficiency. Her body was more capable of doing certain things, and she personally liked it. So I think maybe the theme of other people liking her body is less present, or maybe gone. It's here herself who wants her body, who desires it. It's not other people. Bottle sees her in the first game. He sees her shape, her form, but doesn't recognize it. Her body is seen, but doesn't make a strong impression, maybe. In Tooie, her form is not seen, but simply her presence is felt. It makes the characters jokingly, perhaps intuitively, say it's Grunty. She has become a ghost story for these friends. Her very name, mention of her, already sparks fear. She doesn't even need to be there. Her presence has that effect. The idea of her, knowledge of her name, of her existence, is already enough to frighten. Her body, in the second game, is not necessary for her to be revered by the world. She's already revered. She's a ghost story. The body is simply a way for her to be content with who she is, to be present in the world in ways that maybe let her do what she wants a little better. In Banjo-Kazooie, she isn't recognized by Bottles. Her body is not enough. She wants more recognition. She wants to adapt herself to the desires of the world. The world wants someone who's more like Tootie? That's what the world wants? Okay, well, that's what she will do. She will be Tootie. She will be whoever the world has decided is the cutest, or so her cauldron tells her. Her cauldron gives her the info. She simply respects the info and gets to work making herself, her behavior, her actions fit the model of the world, the Tootie body. Her desires are not at work here. So Tooie is about her desires, in the face not of one person or two, but of 3 and 4, of the whole world. The whole world wants something, but she doesn't care. She wants what she wants, and the world will have to bend to her, give her its life, in fact. In Kazooie, it's her who bends to the force of the whole world. Whatever it is, the cauldron has told her is the world's desire, the kind of person the world respects. She will do that. So here we see a sort of conjunction with what the protagonists do. Banjo, in Tooie, uses Kazooie like a magical rod, like a machine. Kazooie becomes a weapon in his arms. He becomes powerful, and Kazooie a tool. Banjo, like Grunty, is following his own dominance over all objects in the world. The world becomes meaningless, a sort of plaything. Grunty in Kazooie is all about doing what others want, and Banjo does too. He learns to play with others, to not do what he wants, to help and be kind. collaborating with Kazooie in ways that imply they're both people, not a weapon to be used or a machine to be used by Banjo. Banjo, of course, is always sort of nice. He's basically a people pleaser. He'll do anything he's asked very easily. Kazooie stands up. She doesn't accept stuff she thinks is stupid. She speaks her mind to people even if it creates conflict. Grunty has access to a mystical technology in Banjo-Tooie. She has the Bob, a machine which shoots a ray that sucks life out of living beings, I assume, or creatures. She also implies she can use the ray on the entire land to suck the energy from the land, sort of implying we might be talking about a whole place here. I say this technology is mystical because it evokes a few spiritual traits. It sort of bends the rules about life and death. It can revive people. It can bring people back from the dead, which is essentially what Grunty wants from it, to become alive again, for she is now a ghost, a sort of skeleton death thing. This ray falls from the sky, a kind of evoking, in my mind, the idea of a god sending its rays down onto the earth, sending its judgment or blessing. It has a name, of course, which, despite being an acronym, Big O Blaster, sounds like Bob, a name, a person. It makes it seem like this is a living machine, a person whom Gruntilda can use.